All right, before we get with Coach here, with a Murray State win over Southeast Missouri tomorrow, Tennessee State will clinch the #2 seed in the OVC tournament. Coach, opening statement.
Well, first of all, credit to James and what he does with his group. You're talking about from a mental toughness perspective, they are going to run their offense, they're going to take it late in the shot clock, and they're disciplined enough to do it. They don't break down, and then they're going to drive you, they're going to move it, they're going to get an open shot. And for the group that he has and the way they play, they do an excellent job. It's hard to defend. You've got to be tough enough mentally, and we weren't tough enough tonight. And I told him after the game, I thought they deserved to win the game. I really did. I thought their mental toughness was much better than us and than ours. Having said that, everyone always says you just take these wins and when they're ugly and nasty and everything else and enjoy them. From a coaching perspective, it's hard to do that, but we won. Rob Covington had 28 points, 12 rebounds, and I didn't think he played very well. I didn't realize he had those numbers. I thought Will Peters really gave us a big-time lift and making some big-time plays down the stretch, knocking down a three, making his free throws throughout the stretch of the game. But it was one of those games. Kellen was able to give us something. You know, it was just a hard game to flow, even from a fan perspective. I didn't think I coached very well tonight. I think some of the calls I made, I didn't do a good job of helping the team tonight. But, you know, we'll take it. You know, I mean, at this point, it's 18 wins, and, you know, we'll see what happens. But, you know, I told you at the beginning of the year, if we would have been sitting here at this point, 11-4, someone would have told me we had an opportunity to be 12 and 4th in the year in conference play. I would have thought that would have been a number that would have been able to compete for the league title. And obviously, at this point, it's probably not with another Murray win. But having said that, not in a bad position right now, 11-4. I think you could probably go back years ago. I don't know when it's been since we've had this kind of record in the conference. So hats off to our guys for that. But we've got to get so much better, get so much more focused again, and get locked back in.
Now you spoke a little bit about how tough it was to stay mentally strong through the whole game, and there were times where even with a minute to go, you just go, wow, even a 5-point lead or even a 3-point lead looked like it was too big of a lead to come back just by the way it was coming. I mean, what are some of the biggest things that helped your guys out through that time period?
I mean, I hope one of the things that as you watch this team and our teams, period, you know, one of the things I always preach is you never panic. There's plenty of time. We were down 4 with a minute something to go. Maybe been 5, 4 or 5. But that is so much time. And even though they're playing the way they're playing and slowing it down, that is a ton of time. And you try to get guys to understand that typically late in a game is going to be about 5 possessions, 4 or 5 possessions, because whether you're fouling or whatever. Now, it puts some pressure on you to make shots. I mean, let's face it, Rob Covington hits a dagger to tie it. I think he ties it for us from the far corner 3, and he knocks it in. And so, you know, your good players are able to do that. But to be mentally tough enough not to ever give in and understand that it's a long game and you're just going to have to make plays down the stretch. There was a point I looked up the clock late in the game, we're in a timeout, and it looked like we were in trouble. But you got to stick with it and just play the game out.
How are the guys? I mean, obviously you're doing the coaching part and you're talking to them and you're hoping they're listening and taking everything in. But, you know, I mean, it just seems that in some ways, nothing really phases them and they just keep going out and...
Including my voice tonight. You know, we had that look tonight. We were, and it started yesterday in practice. We didn't practice very well. And I told the group and we talked about it. And so what you hope is that I do understand that this is uncharted waters. It really is. And I always tell people, part of winning, you have to learn how to win. Because everyone in the league saw us on TV, on the highlights all day, the day after the Murray game, the day after that. And so it's like I told our team, is that now you can become the story. So everyone watches that, and they're watching you, so you're going to take a shot from them. We have to learn how to take a shot from teams. We have to learn that our energy level now has to be ridiculously high in order to get where we want to be. And so we've got to find a way to start playing better again. And I like us having to deal with that style of play because every night it's not going to be where you're going to be able to get up and down where it's a faster pace. You have to learn how to win different ways, and that's important.
Before we get back to
It's about where it is. I agree. It is not. Yeah.
It is definitely one of those that it's kind of interesting to see on paper and try and figure out. But all of a sudden in overtime, it seemed like you guys had an opportunity to get a little bit of moment or get a little bit of the speed game going back a little bit. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I thought we started out well. And then of course they race back. I don't know. The flow of the game all night was really odd. I thought they did a good job of doing what they wanted to do. We didn't. We get offsetting technicals late in the game. We lose our composure, not thinking. Those are the kind of things that can come back and haunt you. And we escaped. And that's what it was tonight. We flat out, we escaped. But, I don't know. Just, we got to get better. We've got to get our mental capacity back. More than anything, we just got to get our mental capacity back, our focus. And it's hard when everyone's patting you on the back now. It's hard. And that's what's been happening. And, it's like I told our team, it was one game. Big deal. One game. Big deal. Okay, good win. So good teams have a lot of good wins. What's the big deal? And really good teams have more than one good win. And that's the key. And now we've got to go on the road. We go to Oxford, Ohio, play Miami of Ohio, who's going to play the same style this team played. And are we going to be able to beat them on their wood? When you're talking about a team, they've struggled per se from a record standpoint, but if you take a look at their scores, every game they lose by 4, they lose by 7, they lose by 8, they lose by 9. They're never out of games. They don't get blown out. So we got to figure out how we're going to go beat this team and be tough enough on the road to withstand this kind of effort that we're going to get up there.
Now, a couple of you, Will and Robert both spoke on the fact that, stepping out of conference, they're basically trying to say, no, let's treat it like a conference game because it's just as important.
Yeah.
Because it still counts on them staying consistent as well as it helping them to get stronger through the end.
Exactly. And so, hey, 2 back-to-back games where I don't think we played particularly well. Thank goodness they were at home for us. And we just somehow were able to find the energy late down the stretch of games. We stared at this one. We stared defeat in the eyes on this one. But, I don't know. They tell you good teams sometimes just find ways to win games they shouldn't win. I'm not sitting here proclaiming that we're a good team yet. I'm not going to say that. And we're almost at the end of the season, so some people think I'm crazy. But I'll tell you, whether it's at the end of the season or whatever, I'll be able to tell you as I watch us go down the stretch and if we're able to really, really get back focused, because the sign of good teams are focus and mental capacity, and that's what we got to get back to.
And I, and it seems that, deflecting a little bit in the sense that, obviously we are at 18 wins. Obviously it's the first winning season in years. There is that 20 sitting right there as a possibility, which always seems to be a mark. It's kind of a change of mentality. How do you continue to keep these guys and changing the mentality of, bringing the program back to maybe what it was?
Well, I hope that our players listen to the staff, and that's not being arrogant or braggadocious, but I've been on staffs, I've coached teams that have won 20 games, and won 20 games in college as a player. So, I mean, you've been there. There's a reason teams get to that point, and maybe it's 19 or whatever. There's a method to it and how you have to get there. And that's what our group has to understand, and that's no fault of our guys. We haven't been there. But I've always said the hardest thing is learning how to win and learning how to handle wins. And that's important, but it's when we got to try to get our guys to buy in and to listen to what we're saying and those things that, trust me, there's a way to get there. You got to buy the message, listen to the message. Please don't tune us out.
Again, it's a little bit of a, seems like a longer stretch. 2 games left, and it seems like there's a long stretch here.
Jeez.
How do you?
It's a lot of games now. I mean, we're at the 28-game mark, and for most teams, and here's what you have to understand: we had a stretch of games from an emotional standpoint that not only were big games against the top teams in the league, they were all stacked together, and 2 of them were on the road, and we had to find a way to muster energy for every single one of them. And so your tank can get empty, and you know, obviously it starts, you know, we go to P, then you go and you win at Eastern Illinois on the road. All those, anytime you get a road win, that's good. Now, you know, you gotta beat SEMO. You gotta beat them on the road. Then you gotta beat Murray on the road. And before that, we had to beat P at home. And then you come back from Murray, and you gotta beat Tennessee Tech at home. And so all these are all teams that are jumbled together. So, you know, I mean, we had a lot of energy that it was taking to get through that stretch. I mean, I'm serious. When I looked at that stretch, and I don't ever look ahead. I don't ever pay attention to who we know. Half the time, I don't know who we play next. But as you look at that before the season, you think that's a gauntlet. And at the end of the day, you're happy if you split it, you know. And, I mean, as of right now, we haven't split it. We've been able to get through it without a loss. But hopefully we didn't sacrifice all our mental capacity to do it. So we'll see.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, I got a question. Hi, Mr. Willis, Surfers Magazine Sports. The game today was very, like, how can I put this? Dramatic. From y'all perspective, I would say, because they was going at you guys very hard throughout the whole matriculation of the game to the fourth quarter. And again, the players, from my perspective, did look a little tired. They definitely came through at the end, made some big shots to come back and make the win. What do you think? Do you think the players that you have in there, will you be able to take them out? Do you think they'll ever get tired? Do you think the fatigue will go, you know?
Well, I mean, I think fatigue was a factor. Mm-hmm. And when you look at it, you know, we had, 7 guys that played double-figure minutes. We had 2 guys that played 41, 2 guys that played 33. That's a lot of minutes in an overtime game. And then we had some guys. MJ Rate usually plays more than 9 minutes, so he cuts the minutes down to someone else. Kenny Moore didn't play as many minutes as he has been playing. But yes, were our guys tired? I thought we looked tired. I thought we looked lethargic more than anything. Part of that is we're 28 games into the season. I don't know how many practices we are into the season. It's a long stretch, and as I mentioned earlier, we just came off a tough stretch of games. And so this is the time when you got to try to find your energy. This is also what you hope is that if you do get the second seed, it's the reward for a long season and what you've been able to earn, which is why I'll say this and I'll talk about it. Teams that win their conference, I kid you not, should probably get the NCAA bid automatically. Just because, I mean, it's the course of the season. That's harder to do than winning a tournament. Winning a tournament's hard, it's pressure and everything else. But trying to do it through the long haul, that's hard.
Last question. Do you think you're going to put any, like, different players in? Like,
well, I mean, typically
to get, I'm just saying, to get like some minutes for.
Well, I mean, yeah, typically MJ Rett's going to play more minutes for us, and I've sort of settled into a rotation. We're going to play our 5 starters, and then there's going to be 4 guys that typically come off the bench with Kellen Thornton, Kenny Moore, Jordan Cyphers, and Chris Conner have been the guys that have been getting the minutes. So it's been a rotation of 9, and sometimes it'll be a rotation of 10. I mean, there was a point in the game when I put different guys in the game just because I didn't like our energy early in the game. I just didn't like it, but I was searching. You know, trying to find someone to give us a spark, and you know, it was a hard game. We didn't do a good job on the boards. They had too many offensive rebounds, so that's a problem. All right.
Coach, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.